Hey everyone, it is Jade here bringing you another day of vision. We're counting down 100 days of vision to the 2020 election. If you haven't heard yet, my name is Jade Simmons and I am your one, only, truly serious candidate, independent candidate, I should say, for President of the United States. We have been here since January. I announced formally in February. So don't let anybody tell you that I'm just suddenly popping up. If you're suddenly finding out about me, it's because we have been working overtime to put some cracks and dents in the dam that has been the mainstream media. They have refused to bring you our voice. Others have told us to go sit down somewhere, and we have refused. We have kept standing. We encourage you to do the same. Share, share, share. Let people know that you are hearing from someone who has a heart for all of the people. I'm running as an independent. Why? So you don't have to wonder whose side I'm really on, right? We want you to have a president. I think it was Shirley Chisholm who ran for president, African-American woman, back in the day, who ran as a member of the Democratic Party. And she said that she was unbought and unbossed. But do you know she was still not unfettered? She was definitely blocked by her own party from being able to really put herself forward. And so I have decided to run as an independent because I have always been independent. If you check my voting record, you're going to see votes all across the spectrum because I believe balance is key. If we want to serve as many people as possible, we can no longer have one color. We can no longer have one color in the White House. I am praying my phone does not die before this is over. So I'm bringing you 100 Days of Vision. Let me jump in just in case I run out of battery here. Thank you, first of all, to Damian Jones. I was just on his podcast a while ago. We're so thankful to independent media for making a space for my voice. Today, I'm going to talk to you about my economic vision for the nation. I ended up hitting on it yesterday when we talked about needing to be a nation that perseveres, but I want to drive a few points home. If you didn't catch yesterday, go back because I talked about needing to raise the minimum wage. That's the biggest moment we need to have as a nation. Ask yourself why both parties have been in power since 2009 and the minimum wage has stayed at $7.25 since then. Yes, you must now have an independent voice that believes it is time for progress for all Americans. If we just did this one thing on the first day where it was able to raise the minimum wage to $10, do you know that 16 states would immediately be positively affected? They would have a big jump from $7.25 to $10. And then by the end of the first 2 years, I don't have to wait for your whole first term, the end of the first 2 years, to get Congress to finally do what it's been threatening to do and get us to $15 an hour. Do you understand the changes, the life-altering changes people would have if they were able to work at a new, much higher minimum wage? Luckily, many states are already above the $7.25, but that's not a big deal because $7.25 is a low bar. It's a low bar. So I talked about that yesterday. I also talked a little bit about the jobs we would need to create, but today I want to focus on how we must become a producer nation. We are a rampant consumer nation. Any other mothers, fathers out there? Let me prove it to you. When we were young, maybe you got, one Barbie on Christmas, and then for your birthday, you got the next Barbie. And then if you were really lucky, for the next Christmas, you got the Barbie dream house. Are any of you parents like I am? We get it all on the first Christmas. They got all the Barbies, all the dream houses. We are teaching our kids rampant consumerism. We've got to reverse that trend and become a producer nation. Israel is great because it has the number one amount of entrepreneurs there. We have to foster our children to think entrepreneurially, which means that we should be fostering a more entrepreneurial curriculum. Right now, our education system is outdated. We have a rote way of learning. We do not foster critical thinking and entrepreneurship. As a result, you saw us fall flat during COVID-19. We don't even produce our own goods. We had to go to China, get that? We had to go to China and Mexico to get PPE to serve our people in their greatest time of need. The companies we bailed out, I mentioned this yesterday, so I won't harp on it. The companies we bailed out this time around should be bailing us out by bringing American jobs back home. I know the current president says that, but as I told you yesterday, behind our backs, he's signing into law tax codes that incentivize American companies to keep their profit and make their profit abroad. So we have to actually put our money where our mouth is, incentivize corporations to come back. I talk about how to do that at operationrestoration2020.com. You're going to hear me talk about education reform and instituting more entrepreneurial mindset into our education. We also have to bring back the value of vocational training. We've stigmatized that for too long, and we have kids coming out that college is not their thing and they haven't been given the skills to use their hands powerfully. We've got to honor and value our kids where they are, and we need to be nurturing them in a broad sense. We've overcompensated with STEM. We've got to put the arts back into our curriculum as well and give our kids the tools to have successful lives, whether or not they choose college. I'll talk in a future session about education reform on a broader level. Economically speaking, we've got to be talking about creating equal access to opportunity. Here's the real deal. The president will never determine your outcomes. I can't determine what you do with the money that you have. I can't determine what you do with the opportunity that you do have. What I can help be a part of is making sure that your access to opportunity is not blocked, that your opportunity to do more with what you have is not stifled, suppressed, or oppressed, and that I don't allow systemic inequalities and injustices in our education, economic, and criminal justice system to continue so that you don't have the same access to opportunity. We talked about minimum wage. That's important. If you want to ask, we have to start asking hard questions now. If you look at the way that politicians like us to talk, they want us to talk in either or terms, right? I will go back and address some of your questions. We're trying to get all the vision out right now, but I make sure I'll incorporate you later. When you look at the way that politicians would prefer us to talk to each other, they want us to talk in either or. Why? Because if we dare slip up and find common ground, then we don't have to stay behind party lines when we vote. So it behooves them to keep us in fear and to keep each other as being seen as the enemy. Why do I mention that now? Well, you look at how unemployment is being talked about right now. So there's a debate on why people are not going back to work. And so you'll have one side say people are just lazy and don't want to work and they just want money given to them. And, $600 a month is keeping a lot of people staying home, saying, I don't want to go back to that job. I'm actually making more now on unemployment than I was making at my job. And many will look at that and say, oh, that's a symptom of laziness and people not wanting to work. That's not the real question we should be asking. Why is it that a measly little $600 to some, right? You're privileged if you're able to call that measly. Why is it that $600 is enough to keep people home and away from their jobs? It means the jobs they are working at are underpaying them and overworking them. $600 should not be enough to make us stay at home. If it is, the question is, what is it that people are not getting where they are? We must look at not only raising the minimum wage, but we have to close the wage gap. If you look at a place like Walmart, McDonald's, you have something like 1,000 times the minimum wage worker at Walmart. The CEO makes 1,063 times more than the median wage worker at Walmart. You should never have, in a great nation like ours, billion-dollar companies with workers on their roster who are living below the poverty line. Shouldn't even be allowed. So we have to look at closing that gap. You can do that by way of taxing. You can do that by way of incentives. I talk about it more at operationrestoration2020.com. Americans work hard. They should be paid what they are worth, and they should be able to cover all of their basic expenses on one job. You can't say you have great job numbers when the average American has to work 2 to 3 jobs to make ends meet. That is not a healthy show of what jobs should be in this country. Lastly, I want to say, you ever wonder why politicians never talk about homelessness when they're running? I'll give you a second to put that in the comments. Why do you think you never hear that as really an issue being tackled? It's because homeless people can't vote. You have to now demand leadership that determines to serve people even when they can't vote for them, even when they won't factor into their reelection or their attainment of power. But a true leader now must prioritize people all of the time over profit, over politics, and over personal agenda. I talk about homelessness. You'll be seeing that coming out as one of our top 20 visionary platforms, because we not only need to see it as a humanitarian issue, we should be appalled at ourselves as humans that you have this many millions of Americans living on our streets. We have to look at shelter first solutions for our homeless population. We have to look at rehabilitation programs for our homeless population. But we have to ask ourselves now, what is it going to take to see a difference in how we are dealing with this issue? One, people are actually going to have to care. You and me, people, as well as leadership and politicians. So you hear me talk about these homeless issues that we have, but talk about a shelter first initiative to see that problem begin to dissipate. That's going to be a long-term problem. We have to look at multifaceted solutions for that. Speaking of homelessness, we have to talk about affordable housing. Can't get into it all right now. This is 100 Days of Vision if you're tuning in. Each day I'm bringing you a little bit, or maybe a lot, of the policies and platforms that inform the way that I not only see the nation, but how I see you. And I see all people worthy of access to opportunity, right? So you'll hear me talk about things like mental health awareness, mental health issues that we must now deal with on a broader scale because it affects our education system, it affects our military, it affects our policing situation. But when we look at just affordability in this country, which is what we're talking about today, we have to judge our economy now not by the stock market, not by the GDP. You know, the stock market's actually doing really well right now. How about that? The stock market is doing really well right now. It is not a true reflection of how most Americans are living. Most Americans are figuring out how to pay for the next trip to the market. They're not thinking about the stock market or the GDP. We have to now begin to judge our economic health by whether or not every American has access to food, water, and shelter, period, point blank. That has to be the new metric. And when you have 38 million plus people living below the poverty line, we've got a problem that we must deal with. That's going to require a paradigm shift. You're not going to see that addressed by the current president. His focus is on corporations. His focus is also on personal agenda and profit. He's unapologetic about it. He doesn't hide it. He conducts the government the same way he conducted his business. The small man was always left out of the equation. Ask many of the people who were left unpaid by the countless bankruptcies that we saw. If you look at Vice President Joe Biden, I think we have to have some concerns about the donors that are funding his campaign. He's got to owe a lot of people once he gets into office. The beauty of running as an independent is that I get to come in unattached to any big donors, any corporations. You're talking to someone who has corporations as clients, but not as donors. Do you understand that in my business, I have access to corporations? And the corporations I have access to, I'm proud to introduce you to as president because they are corporations who their CEOs have prioritized their people. They're making incredible profit, but they have put their people first. They are interested in mutually beneficial transactions. Even with that access, I come to you without corporate funding. Do you know how hard that is to make this a genuine grassroots campaign powered by people? People have pulled out of their own pocketbooks to make sure that we've lasted this long, and we're proud of that. We are going to be the least expensive presidential campaign in the history of our nation because we think it is an abomination that hundreds of millions of dollars goes wasted to the attainment of political power when everybody you see running talks about the money they want to spend to help people, but they spend billions now in just attaining power. Think about all the candidates who are no longer in the race. What happens to that money? Just poof, right? We are a tight run operation. It's taken us a while to be heard because we had certain principles we wanted to adhere to. And also we saw some pretty staunch opposition where the mainstream media is concerned. Red and blue don't work together for much, but many of you should know, do your homework, make sure I'm telling you the truth. Republicans and Democrats actually have a law-binding agreement to keep third-party voices out of the official debates. That's why you're wondering why you haven't heard of me. They work together on that. We've decided to stay standing because we know that when people found us, they would resonate with what we're proposing. Lastly, you will hear me talk about welfare reform. Why would I do that when people need assistance? Because people need to make sure they are not being in a situation where they're being under the thumb of government-controlled poverty. That is how our welfare system is set up. It penalizes women for having male figures in the home. It penalizes people for getting promotions, yet you tell them to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, and the very promotion that they have worked their butt off is costing them the assistance they need. They get yanked up the assistance, have to give back the promotion, start back at square one. Wash, rinse, repeat. You must now demand that people who are on assistance are allowed to have savings accounts. Come on, you can't be out of one side of your mouth saying you want people to save for the future and then disallowing them the very vehicles to be able to save. We now have to take a look at our economy with open eyes, aside from party lines, and say what's going to be best for the American people. I want to help people build a true pathway out of poverty. I don't want generations of families growing up on assistance, because vision is key. And if kids look up and cannot see that their parents have made a way out of poverty, it is that much less likely that they can imagine themselves out of that same situation. So we are tired of seeing poverty perpetuated. At the same time, we must address those issues with compassion. You don't yank families off a snap in the middle of COVID-19. Okay, so I'm getting passionate here. Go to Operation Restoration 2020. You'll hear everything pretty much that I've talked about today. You'll see platform policy, or at least a statement on that. Keep checking in every day. We're here on Instagram. We're also at Operation Restoration 2020 on Facebook. And we ask you to hold us accountable. Don't just like me because I'm black. Don't just like me because I'm different. Don't just like me because I'm a woman. Like the vision. This is a chance where we get to vote on the vision. I say let the best vision win. I'm going to go back through your comments here before my phone dies. Let's see here. Thank you guys for tuning in. People keep saying, how do we help? How do we help? Spread the word. Spread the word. Share as often as possible. And don't just share in an empty fashion. Share and let people know in your caption what's resonating with you. Thank you that your family's voting for me. That's a big deal. We don't take it lightly. We are not entitled to your vote, so continue to watch. Make sure that mine is the vision that you want to see, not just in the White House, but on your streets. Thank you so much for your compliment. All right, if you become the president of the United States for the young teens that are in prison, for a life sentence for 20 years, there's a chance you can help them. We've got to reform the way we do sentencing right now. Right now, it's so lopsided that the sentencing does not match the crime. You know, you've got a situation where if you have enough money, you can get out, you can get away with murder. If you don't have money, you might be in for 10, 15 years on a minor drug charge. That's a backwards issue that we have to deal with. So yes, we are looking at how do we reform the juvenile justice system? How do we make it so that we have lesser rates of recidivism, which of course just means people going back to jail? That actually also begins in the education system. I'll be covering education reform over the weekend as well. Right now you have a situation where some kids get diagnoses, other kids get referrals. Right? And so we have to make sure that right now what's happening is disproportionately children of color are getting discipline referrals, and other children, mostly namely Caucasian children, are getting diagnoses. And we have to make sure that even when we get diagnoses, that parents can afford the treatment, the accommodations that their kids need, and that the schools that their kids go to can also provide the right resources. So that's a problem that goes beyond the prison system, and I believe begins in the education system as well. Checking a few more. Listen, he said it, he or she, I can't see from right here. Bracy Face Perry says, it's sad that a lot of people don't know about you. Listen, we don't shed any tears over here. Listen, if we had stepped back when the first person told us that we should have went and sat down somewhere, then you really wouldn't hear about us. Our job is to keep standing so that when people like you find us, don't be sad for us, stand with us and spread the word. So we're not sad over here. We're going to continue to stay standing. You're going to see us until the time comes. Minimum wage in Cali is 15. Yes. Everything in that state is ridiculously expensive, and it reflects across all the states. Yeah, you know, we have to take that into account. It's great that California's already there, but you got places like, I believe, Alabama, Louisiana, let me not name them wrongly, that are still at that 725 level. So 15 really is just starters. In my company, minimum wage for our company was $18, not because we had to, not because the federal wage dictated it, but because we believe that your people are your purpose. That if you're people who you are working hard, if you work for me, you work hard. Yeah. One of my assistants in here, you work for me, you work hard. We want to make sure that you enjoy your work, that you have purpose in your work. And just strategically speaking, as a business owner, if you want to retain your workers, you've got to treat them well and show them that their work is worth. If they're helping you build the American dream, they should have a piece of it as well. Checking before we go. All right. Thoughts on the trans community? Yes, yes, yes. Everybody's been inboxing me. Where do you stand on LGBTQ? So I get that question a lot. And the question really translates to, especially because I'm openly a person of faith. I am of the Christian faith. I'm a follower of Christ. And because there's been such a bad example of what it means to be a follower of Christ, we've seen the hijacking of religion on the right, which is one of the reasons that I run openly as a Christian, so that when you go do your digging, you don't have to wonder if I'm the same Christian as what you've been seeing coming out of certain areas of the political spectrum. Here's what I believe. My LGBTQ family, let me tell you how I believe. First of all, we are all children of God. So whether or not we agree the same, whether or not we define marriage the same, whether or not we make the same life choices, I am mandated because of the God that I serve to honor, protect, serve, and love all human beings. So you don't have to worry about whether or not I see your life as being of value. When people say, all lives matter, that has to really mean all lives. So what I believe now is that our outrage has to be equal. That if I am outraged by the death of George Floyd, I am here in Little Rock, Arkansas, and because I don't know if the family would be okay with it, I won't name the woman's name, but there's a high profile case here of a transgender woman who was also murdered. And they had a few murders in record time here. I have to be equally outraged as well. So what you really are asking is, do you care about us? Do you care if we're discriminated against? Do you care if our lives are taken unjustly? And the answer is yes. Are we going to agree on all of the issues? No, we're not. But the point is, honor is supposed to be in service to us, even when we're not in agreement. So that's the long answer, but you'll be able to see everything put out in detail. It's what I call an LGBTQ plus promise that we are making to the nation. I believe as a person of faith, I should be able to stand on my convictions. That shouldn't offend you, and you believing differently shouldn't offend me. But it also believes that as the leader of the nation, I don't get to pick and choose who I serve powerfully. I don't get to pick and choose who gets discriminated against and who doesn't. My job has to be that everybody is treated equally, everybody has access to opportunity, access to employment, access to housing. So those are the things that we promise. I hope that answers your question. Let me go on. Okay, same question there. Same question there. Vote like your life depends on it, because it does. Spread the message, wow, and not the disease, and wear your mask, save lives. I agree. I feel like one thing we didn't do effectively during COVID-19 is we were a bit selfish as people. We didn't want to sacrifice personally our conveniences, and as a result, we sacrificed a lot of human beings. And I think that that's blood on the hands of many of us, not just one side or the other. If we fed into the division during this season, if we allowed COVID-19 to be politicized on our watch, we have a role to play in the disaster that we're seeing. So my hope is that we all do better. As we're watching this resurgence, we all stop politicizing this and just do whatever it takes to save more lives. Nobody likes wearing a mask. Well, I sort of do, because you can't always see my personal expressions. I sort of do like it, I can't lie. But you know what I mean? We don't always want to be in a mask. We want to be free. We want to have liberty. But true liberty means that we have the freedom to do things that take care of others and not just ourselves. That's a freedom that we need to practice more often. All right, checking a few more before we go. I know you're just finding out about me running. We talked about it earlier. Go back and watch the replay. There's been some pretty strenuous media oppression. Both the right and the left want to make sure you don't hear about me. What's wild is people on the right think that I'm going to split the Republican vote. People on the left think that I'm going to split the Democratic vote, the black vote. Let's do the math. If all of those plus all the people in America who feel politically homeless right now actually voted for me, we'd win in a landslide. We wouldn't be a spoiler. We'd win in a landslide. So spread the word and let people know that I'm here. Essential workers should receive hazard pay. How is this even a discussion, Jenny Pauline? This is what I said from day one. The stimulus package should have come out of the gate with bonuses for frontline workers. You all were trying to struggle to find childcare in the middle of this. There were residents, students who were completing their residency, who were babysitting because we didn't have childcare provisions for you as well. And then we went and reopened haphazardly, and what that means is many of you have not even recovered from the first wave of COVID-19. Shame on us. You should have received a bonus immediately in the stimulus. because you were covering your own PPEs, which is absolutely ridiculous. And I think now we're going to have to make sure you also have incredible access to mental health services, because I think we are overburdening our healthcare workers, and we see suicide rates rising amongst our healthcare workers. So we just pray blessings over you, and that you will see a financial restoration as well as an emotional restoration, that this season of darkness will not get you down. And we thank you for the light that you are bringing into the atmospheres that you're going into. We just pray right now that all these healthcare workers are able to not only survive the situation, but that they take these lessons learned and are able to teach back to us how we can do better the next time around. I don't see you anywhere. Keep looking. I'm here. You'll find me. Okay, that's mostly it, I think. One more. Just wanted to say you support me. Thank you so much. Thank you for your family supporting me as well. We don't take that lightly. And we also tell you, don't take your support of me lightly. Hold me accountable. Watch me every day. When you do see me on CNN or you see me on Fox, make sure I look like the same person talking to you right now on Instagram when I'm talking to them. If you see me talking to white people, make sure I'm saying the same thing that I say when I'm talking to black people. Make sure that I'm not out here pandering and saying what I think people want me to say. Make sure that I'm consistent, because we have not seen that, and that's what we deserve as the American people. We need to know where our leader truly stands and how they truly see us. Thank you for agreeing to the interview on Big Woo Radio this evening. I know it's been an interview day. I'm excited. I'll be seeing you guys in a few as well. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. This has been day 2 of 100 Days of Vision. I got to catch up because we're a couple days behind, but spread the word. Let people know that this is a serious candidacy running to make serious change, paradigm shifts where our nation is concerned. I believe in who we can become, which is just simply trying to be what we've always been saying we are: one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let's make sure that's no longer our catchphrase. Let's make sure it actually looks like who we are. All right. Love you guys. Spread the word. Talk to you soon.